Hey guys, I hope that you all are safe in your houses and are moving out only when it's very necessary. And you guys must have started studying because your examinations are coming near and you won't get much time to prepare for them. So we had already started the first chapter of civics, that is power sharing, and we had completed that. So today we will be starting with the second chapter, that is federalism. So if you are new to this channel, don't forget to like this video and like the other videos. We have already started English, Maths and Social Science on this channel for class 10. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel. So before we move on to the contents of the next chapter, it is important that we recall some of the important points of the last chapter, power sharing. So we had studied about the two stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka. Now we will be studying what actually took place, what was the situation in Belgium in 1990s. So let us have a look at that. But before that, I want all of you to please pay close attention to the things which are displayed on your screen. And if you have a pen and a paper handy, don't forget to jot down the important points. So let us now look on the important points that are written on the screen. So the central government of Belgium could take away the powers of the regional government. We know that the regional government came into existence in the Flemish and the Wallonia region. But what was the use of this regional government when the central government could take away their powers? So after 1993, the regional governments were given constitutional powers with which the regional governments were no longer dependent on the central government. So what actually happened was after 1993, the regional government's powers were written down in the constitution. Now the constitution guarantees these powers. So now the regional governments were no longer accountable to the central government. Therefore, Belgium shifted from unitary form of government to a federal form of government. We had studied about federalism as one of the forms of power sharing, and it is also known as the vertical distribution of power. So we will be looking what federalism is in general in this chapter. But you all need to remember this particular point. It is very important that after 1993, Belgium shifted from a unitary form of government to a federal form of government. And when we talk about the same situation that was prevalent in Sri Lanka, we know that Sri Lanka is still a unitary form of government. The Tamil speakers are demanding the country to become a federal form, but the country is still a unitary form of government. So now let us look what federalism actually means. So federalism is a system in which the power is divided between a central authority and various constituent units of the country. The best way to understand federalism is to look at the structure of our own country. We know that there is a central government, a union government, which controls or administers the whole country. When we talk about the states, we have the state governments. When we talk about the districts, we have the municipal corporations. And when we talk about the rural or the village areas, we have the panchayats. So this way there are different levels of government and the power of different governments is different, and therefore the power is divided between a central authority, that is the union government, and various different levels of the government. So this is exactly what federalism is. So federalism is a system in which the power is divided between a central authority and various constituent units of the country. Now let us understand what is the difference between unitary form of government and a federal form of government. We have studied that Belgium is now a federal form of government and Sri Lanka is a unitary form of government. But we need to clearly understand what is the difference between the two. So now let us have a look at that. So in a unitary form of government, there is usually one level of government, or the subunits are subordinate to the central government. The central government can pass orders to the state government. So in a unitary form of government, there exists one single form of government which administers the whole country. And if by chance there are some subunits, such as the regional or the provincial administration or the government, then these are subordinate. That means that they will be accountable to the central authority. The central government can ask the state governments to take any decision that they like, and therefore the state governments cannot function independently. But in a federal form of government, the state government is not answerable to the central government, but both of these governments are answerable to the people. So if we consider the situation of our very own country, India, we see that the state governments can take decisions independently, the central government can take the decisions independently. But both of these are answerable to the people. So you all must know that you have a particular right known as the right to information. Okay, so now through this right you can ask can seek information of any government agency, of any government policy, be it the central government or the state government. So this is the way how the both levels of government are answerable to the people. But both of these level of governments are not answerable to each other. Therefore, the central government is not answerable to the state government, and the state government is not answerable to the central government for the decisions that it takes. So now we have studied what is known as federalism. We have studied the difference between a unitary form of government and a federal form of government. So now we move on to the important topic of this particular chapter, and that is the 7 important features of federalism. I want all of you to pay close attention to all the points that we will be discussing one by one. So let us look at the first point. There are 2 or more levels of government. So we have seen that there is usually 2 levels of government. First the central government, then we have the state governments, and a country like ours we have 3 levels of government. Therefore, this form of government, that is the federalism, will have at least 2 levels of government. Second, different tiers of government govern the same citizens, but each tier has its own jurisdiction in specific matters of legislation, taxation and administration. Now what does this mean? See, if you live in a particular district, the municipal corporation will govern you. At the same time, the state government will also govern you, and at the same time, the central government will also govern you. So what is happening is that the different levels of government are actually governing the same level of people, but their jurisdiction is different. So what is jurisdiction? See, jurisdiction is an area over which an authority has legal authority. Therefore, when we talk about the union government, we see that it has legal authority all over the country. The state government has legal authority only within the state. The municipal corporation has legal authority only within the district level. Therefore, although they govern the same citizens, but their jurisdiction in terms of legislation, taxation and administration, they differ. So the central government would be governing the whole country. They would have their different jurisdiction. The state government a different jurisdiction. This municipal corporation, the panchayats are different jurisdiction. So I hope that this is clear. Now let us look at the third point. The jurisdictions of all the respective levels of tiers of the governments are specified in the constitution. See, what happens is that when we talk about any power, when we talk about any provision, it is important that it is written down somewhere. If any disputes arises, we actually consider the constitution as the ultimate remedy. Okay, so if a thing is written in a constitution, it is guaranteed. Therefore, the jurisdiction of all levels of governments are written in the constitution. So if there is any dispute, the courts can interpret the constitution, and the state governments or the central government can tell each other that this is my jurisdiction and it has been guaranteed by the constitution. Therefore, constitution plays a very important role, and the jurisdiction of each and every level is written in this particular constitution. That is our Indian constitution. The fundamental provision of the constitution cannot be unilaterally changed by one level of government. We all know that the constitution of a country is a very, very important document. It actually gives us certain fundamental rights, and it also has certain fundamental duties. So the basic things, that are the basic aspects, that is the basic or the fundamental aspects of constitution cannot, I stress here, cannot be changed by any single form of government unilaterally. That means a state government cannot change the provision. That means that it cannot take your right to education unilaterally. Okay, this is now how it works. So any form of government, any level of government cannot take away certain basic rights, certain basic aspects, certain fundamental principles that are written in the constitution. Fifth point is courts have the power to interpret the constitution and powers of different level of government. So we know that if there is any dispute, where do we go? We go to courts. So courts are actually an institution which has the power to interpret the constitution and tell the different levels of government about their powers. So what can happen is that the central government say that I have power over this, I have powers over different things, or the state government can say that I have power over other state. So this will not happen, because if these disputes happen, the court can interpret the constitution that these are your particular powers, these are the powers that you can take, and other than that you have no powers. Therefore, courts actually play the role of an umpire, and they interpret the constitution, and if there is any dispute, if there is any confusion between the powers of different levels of government, they specify the powers of the different levels of government. Sixth, sources of revenue for each level of government are clearly specified to ensure its financial autonomy. So what happens is that now why this point is very necessary is because the central government governs the whole country. So it is quite natural, right? They will have a lot amount of wealth. But what about the state governments? If the union government decide that we will not share any part of our revenue with the state governments, what will the state governments do? So this is actually specified in the constitution that the state governments can collect revenue on certain subjects. The central government can collect revenues on certain subjects. So this way, the state government is not dependent on the central government for revenue, and all of them have their own financial autonomy, that is their own financial independence. Now let us look at the 7th. This particular point is very important and it has been asked in many of the questions. So I want all of you to please pay close attention to this. The federal system thus has dual objectives: to safeguard and promote unity of the country while at the same time accommodate regional diversity. So we understood why power sharing is very desirable in the last chapter. Therefore, federal form of government is one form of power sharing. Therefore, it has two objectives. What are these two objectives? First is to safeguard and promote unity of the country. When there will be power sharing, when there will be different level of government, many different people can stay together as one, and this way unity is maintained. Second, at the same time, accommodate regional diversity. So what happens is many people of different religious background, of different linguistic backgrounds, they can stay together in a particular country. Therefore, an ideal federal system has both aspects, that is mutual trust and agreement to live together. So it is quite natural, right? We all live with our fellow Indians, so we have a mutual trust between us, and at the same time we agree to live with each other. We don't say that you belong to this particular religion, you belong to this particular state, I will not stay with you. This does not happen in our country, right? So therefore, an ideal federal system is a system in which there are both aspects, that is mutual trust and agreement to live together. So you guys need to remember these two objectives of the federal system and the two aspects of federalism. These are very important questions, 1 mark questions, 2 mark questions, and they can be asked in your examinations. So we have now studied what are the different types, what are the different basic features of federalism. Now it's time we understand what are the different types of federations. Okay, so there are basically two types of federation. Now let us look at the first type of federation. The first type involves independent states coming together on their own to form a bigger unit, so that by pooling sovereignty and retaining identity, they can increase their security. This type of coming together federation includes USA, Switzerland and Australia. So what actually happens in coming together type of federation? Coming together type of federations are the federations in which different states have different parts. Different states come together to form a country. Okay, they have their different states, they could have been independent country, but they decided that we will come together as one nation and we will function as one nation. So this way we can maintain a unity, and at the same time we can have many benefits of a country. So this is how the coming together form of federation came into existence. The important example of coming together federation are USA, Switzerland and Australia. I want all of you to underline this in your books, and if you're writing them down, write them down on the piece of paper, because these three countries are very important examples of coming together federation, which include USA, Switzerland and Australia. The next type of federation is the holding together federation. Now what is this holding together federation? Let us have a look at that. The second route is where a large country decides to divide its power between the constituent states and the national government. India, Spain and Belgium are examples of this holding together federation. Very often different constituent units of the federation have unequal powers. Some units are granted special powers. So now it is important that we look at the second type of federation, that is the holding together federation. As the name suggests, in this the different states are held on together by a central authority. So what usually happens is that the big country decides that it will now share powers with the state, and this way it will be able to share power and it will be able to accommodate regional diversity, at the same time social diversity. So this is actually a form of holding together federation. So the three important examples are India, Belgium and Spain. So these are the three important examples of holding together federation, and you need to remember them because they are asked in your questions and they can be asked as the Belgium example of which type of federation. So you have to write that it's an example of holding together federation. So let us look at the second point that is written. Very often different constituent units of the federation have unequal powers. Some units are granted special powers. Now you all probably know that we have different states which have different powers. Okay. Last year till 2019 the state of Jammu Kashmir had a separate constitution. Okay, so this is what actually happens in holding together federation. So certain states have less powers, like the union territories do not have the powers of a state, they are controlled by the central authority, whereas certain states have excess powers. So this is an unequal balance of powers, and this is what exactly happens in a holding together federation. What actually happens in a coming together federation is that all these states, they have come together as one. So all the different states have their own individual and equal powers. So if you know that in USA there are different laws in different states, and therefore the central authority cannot directly order them to take any particular decision. They have to keep in consensus of all the states. So now you all must be clear with the two types of federation. Now let us look what actually makes India a federal country. So we had studied what federalism is, we had studied about the basic features of federalism, but what actually makes India a federal country, now we'll be studying that. We can see that all the features apply to the provision of the Indian Constitution. So if you recall the seven features that we have studied of federalism, and if you apply them to the Indian Constitution, we find that the provisions of the Indian Constitution actually fulfill the values, all the features of the federalism. The Constitution originally provided for a two-tier system of government, the union government, or what we call the central government, representing the Union of India, and state governments. Later, a third tier of federalism was added in the form of panchayats and municipalities. So we had already studied that there are different forms of governments. Initially, the Constitution said that there will be two levels of government, the central governments and the state governments, and later on we included the third tier of federalism government, federal level of government, that is the form of panchayats and municipal corporations. So Constitution clearly provided a threefold distribution of legislative powers between the union governments and the state governments. Thus it contains three lists. So in practical sense, it is very important that different powers are situated, different things are clearly laid out in the Constitution for the different levels of government. So Constitution actually provides a distribution of threefold legislative powers, and therefore it contains three lists. Now what are these lists? These lists actually consist of subjects with which the different levels of government have right to form laws and administer them. So there are three lists. First is the union list, second is the state list, and third is the concurrent list. So we will look at these lists one by one. First, let us look at the union list. Union list includes subjects of national importance such as defense of the country, foreign affairs, banking, communications and currency. They are included in this list because we need a uniform policy on these matters throughout the country. Now there are certain subjects like national security, foreign affairs, banking, communication and currency. So they need to have a uniform standard all over the country. Okay, so if we give these things to a state government, what will happen? A state will have different currency, the other state will have a different currency. The uniform of the army in particular state will be different, in a different state it will be different. So this way what happen, it will create problem. Therefore these are things given to the union form of government. So the union government can make laws, they can administer it, and they can take the revenues and all. The state governments have no authority over these subjects. Now let us look at what are the different subjects that the state government can make laws on. Now these state list actually contain the subjects on which the state government has authority and legislation. So the state list contains subjects of state and local importance such as police, trade, commerce, agriculture and irrigation. So you know that different states have different level of administration, different way of administration. Therefore police, the way of handling of police will be different in different states, the trade will be different, the commerce will be different, the way of agriculture in the mountain areas will be different, in the plains it will be different, in the desert areas it will be different. So these are certain things which the states have independent authority to make laws and take the revenue and development and administer them in general on these particular issues. Now let us look at the third list, that is the concurrent list. The concurrent list includes subjects of common interest to both the union government as well as the state government, such as education, forest, trade unions, marriage, adoption, and succession. Both the union and the state governments can make laws on the subjects mentioned in this law. If the laws conflict with each other, law made by the union government will prevail. Now, what actually happens is that there are certain subjects which are of importance to both the union government and the state governments. So these all subjects are in the concurrent list. So what can these example of these concurrent subjects are: education, forest, trade unions, marriage, adoption, and succession. So you should know what are the different subjects that come under the three lists, and therefore this is the concurrent list that we are talking about. So both the union and the state governments can form laws on the subjects that are given in this list. But what happens if there is a conflict between the state government and the central government? The state government makes some different law and the central government makes a different law. So what will happen is that the law that is made by the central government will be prevailing. So that will be acceptable. The law made by the state government will not be acceptable. So this is important point. You all must need to keep this in mind. So with this we wind up with the three list. And now let us look what are the different other things that makes our country a federal country. So now let us look at this point. The union government has the power to legislate on residuary subjects. Now what are these residuary subjects? See, these are the subject matters, or these are the industries, the sectors which had come into existence after the constitution was made. So you all know that the constitution came into effect in the year 1950. After that, a lot many things have come into place. So the best example is the computer technology and the use of internet. We know that we have cyber laws. So this sector of cyber law and cyber space work and all, they now come under the residuary subjects and are controlled solely by the central government. So anything that has come after the constitution goes into the residuary subjects and are controlled by the central government. Now before I move on to the next point, which is about union territories, I would like to ask all of you a simple question. What is the number of states and union territories that are present in India? Now, if you guys answered 29 states and 7 union territories, then you are absolutely wrong, because there are 28 states and 9 union territories. You all know that in 2019, Article 370 was scrapped off, and due to this, we now have 2 union territories, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. So, 28 states and 9 union territories. Now, this brings us to the next topic, that is the union territories. There are areas which are too small to become an independent state, but which could not be merged with any other existing state. These areas like Chandigarh or Lakshadweep or the capital city of Delhi are called union territories. These territories do not have the power of a state. The central government has special powers in running these areas. So there are certain areas in our country which are too small to become a state, and these areas are so diverse and many different things are there that they cannot be merged with existing states. So these areas, special areas, are known as union territories. Now these union territories do not have the power of the states and are solely controlled by the central government. So the central government has certain provisions in the constitution which enable it to run these union territories. That is the reason why they are known as union territory, under the control of the union, that is the union government. Now let's move on to the next point. Some states enjoy special status. States such as Assam, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh and Mizoram enjoy special powers under certain provisions of the Constitution of India, Article 371, due to their peculiar social and historical circumstances. So if you guys remember that Jammu and Kashmir before 2019 used to have a separate constitution. So this was a special privilege which was given to a state. Even now the states of Assam, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh have special powers under Article 371 due to their peculiar social and historical circumstances. So there are certain powers that have been given to them. We have studied that in holding together federations, some of the states have unequal powers and there is a distribution of unequal powers between the states. Therefore, this is one feature which makes India a federal country. Now, these special powers are especially enjoyed in relation to the protection of land rights of indigenous people, their culture, and also preferential employment in government services. So these special powers, are enjoyed in relation to acquisition of land rights for the indigenous people, the preservation of their culture, and preferential employment in government schemes. So if there are government services, so these people belonging to this particular state will be preferred for application and for that particular post. Now the most important point is very Now, this is the most important point that makes a country a federal country, and that is the parliament on its own cannot change this arrangement. Any changes, it has to be first passed by both houses of parliament with at least 2/3 majority. So we all know that in the parliament there are two houses, the upper house and the lower house, that is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. So for anything to be passed, such as amendment in the constitution or anything that has to be changed, which is written in the constitution, one house cannot do this alone. This needs to be ratified by both the houses, and that too with 2/3 majority in both the houses. So this is one of the most important features of our constitution and also of a federal form of government. Therefore, you guys need to understand this. You guys need to underline this in your textbook, because this is a very important 1-mark question, that how much majority, that is 2/3 majority, is needed in both the houses for anything, for any changes that had to be made in the constitution. Now with this, we have completed half of the chapter and the remaining half is left and will be covered in the next video. The next topics that we will be studying is how actually federalism is practiced in India. The 3 important points, that is state-center relation, language policy, linguistic states. And then we will look at the most important topics of this chapter and the last chapter and the last topic, that is decentralization in India. So I want all of you to go through all the points, watch this video once again, and if you have any doubts, feel free to ask them in the comment section. Eagerly waiting for your comments. So till then, keep studying and stay safe.